Let's start our first news with Islam Makhachev addressing the growing retirement talk surrounding his future. If you've been following the latest updates, you'll remember that Islam recently revealed that his mother does not want him to keep fighting anymore. She reportedly wants him to follow the same path as Khabib and retire early. She even told Islam that she wanted to sit down with Khabib for a one-on-one conversation about the situation. That immediately raised questions about Islam's future, especially with his upcoming fight against Ian Garry. Could this potentially be one of the final fights of his career? Islam will turn 35 in November, while Khabib retired at just 32. Because of that comparison, speculation began spreading across social media that Islam could also be preparing to walk away from MMA sooner than expected. However, Islam has now made his position very clear. When Mike Bohn asked him directly about the retirement rumors, Islam quickly shut them down. According to Islam, somebody started spreading what he called fake news, claiming that he would retire after the Ian Garry fight. But Islam says that is simply not true. He made it clear that he wants to continue fighting and has no plans to walk away after this matchup. Islam also said that he wants to keep competing for years and believes he can break records before eventually calling it a career. So, for now, fans can put those retirement rumors aside. The confusion appears to have come from social media posts claiming that the Ian Garry fight would be Islam's last appearance inside the UFC octagon. Islam's latest comments directly contradict those claims, making it clear that he intends to keep fighting and remain active for the foreseeable future. Move on to another news, as Charles Oliveira has now given his prediction for the highly anticipated Islam Makhachev versus Ian Garry matchup at UFC 330. During a recent interview with MMA Fighting, Charles Oliveira shared his thoughts on the fight, and his prediction could definitely surprise some fans. Oliveira believes Ian Garry has a very real chance of shocking the world and defeating Islam. According to Charles, he isn't making that prediction simply because Ian is his friend or because they are part of the same team. Instead, he says his opinion comes from what he has seen from Ian, especially the way he has been preparing for this fight. Oliveira acknowledged that there is an incredibly tough opponent standing across from Ian. He made it clear that Islam deserves all the respect in the world and praised him for being one of the most difficult fighters to deal with inside the cage. Charles also pointed out that Islam may appear calm and humble while promoting a fight, but once the cage door closes, everything changes. He's an outstanding fighter, extremely difficult to deal with, and someone who has proven himself at the highest level of MMA. But despite all of that, Oliveira still believes Ian has a great chance of winning. The biggest reason, according to Charles, is Ian's strategic approach to fighting. Oliveira believes Garry is intelligent, disciplined, and capable of sticking to his game plan without abandoning it when things become difficult. That could become extremely important against someone like Islam, who is known for controlling opponents with his pressure, grappling, and ability to dictate the pace of a fight. Oliveira's prediction doesn't guarantee anything, but it certainly adds another interesting layer to the matchup. With one of the sport's elite fighters backing Ian's chances, the anticipation surrounding this fight continues to build. Move on to another news, because Islam Makhachev has responded to a recent interview from Ian Garry, and his reaction was anything but positive. As the welterweight title fight between Islam and Ian Garry gets closer, the tension surrounding the matchup continues to build. The two fighters are preparing to meet on August 15th, and every interview, comment, and social media clip is now being closely analyzed by fans. Recently, Ian Garry shared his thoughts on the idea of women ruling the world. During the interview, Ian suggested that if women were in charge and everyone simply listened to them, things could become much easier. That clip quickly began circulating online, and it eventually caught the attention of Islam. Islam watched the interview and didn't hold back when giving his opinion. He said that Ian looked very bad during the interview and suggested that his opponent should spend more time training and less time doing interviews. Islam also appeared to question whether Ian was completely in control of what he was saying. He suggested that it looked as though someone around Ian could be influencing him or telling him what to say during interviews. For Islam, the interview apparently didn't leave a good impression at all. He repeated that Ian looked bad and made it clear that he would rather see his upcoming opponent focused on preparing for their fight instead of spending too much time in front of the cameras. Of course, this is another example of the psychological side of a major UFC fight. With the matchup getting closer, both fighters are under increasing attention, and every statement can quickly become part of the buildup. Islam is entering the fight with a reputation as one of the most dominant fighters in the sport, while Ian is attempting to make a major statement by challenging him for the title. That makes every interaction between the two even more interesting. Islam's latest comments add another layer of tension to an already highly anticipated matchup, especially after he publicly criticized the way Ian handled that interview. Now, as Fight Night approaches, the focus will eventually shift away from interviews and toward what happens inside the octagon, where both fighters will have the opportunity to prove themselves. Move on to another news, because Dustin Poirier and Jorge Masvidal have identified what they believe could be a nightmare matchup for Islam Makhachev. During an appearance on the Deep Water Show, Poirier and Masvidal discussed Yaroslav Amosov and explained why they believe he could create serious problems for Islam. Amosov currently holds an impressive 30-1 professional record, and he most recently defeated Joel Alvarez by submission in the second round at UFC 328. The only loss on his professional record came against Jason Jackson, who stopped him by knockout at Bellator 301 in 2023. Despite that single defeat, Poirier believes Amosov is an extremely difficult opponent for almost anyone in the sport. Poirier made it clear that he has a lot of respect for Carlos Prates and considers him one of the most violent fighters competing today. However, when it comes to Amosov, Dustin believes that is simply a bad matchup. According to Poirier, Amosov is the type of fighter who can be a problem for everyone, from the top of the division all the way down to the lower-ranked contenders. But when Islam's name came up, the assessment became even stronger. Poirier described Amosov as a nightmare for Islam. Masvidal agreed with that assessment, suggesting that Amosov could have several physical advantages that would make the matchup particularly difficult. One of the biggest factors they pointed to is Amosov's size. He is bigger and longer, and Poirier also believes he could potentially be stronger than Islam. His wrestling credentials are another major reason for the confidence. Amosov has a high-level wrestling background and has competed successfully against elite opponents, giving him the experience to deal with different styles of grappling. Poirier believes that Amosov would be comfortable defending the techniques Islam is known for, including body locks, foot sweeps, and close-range grappling exchanges. That could create a fascinating stylistic battle. If Amosov's wrestling is good enough to cancel out Islam's wrestling advantage, Poirier believes the fight could then shift toward the striking. And in that situation, he sees another advantage for Amosov. Poirier believes Yaroslav could be better on the feet, creating problems for Islam in multiple areas and making the overall matchup extremely difficult. For Poirier and Masvidal, Amosov isn't simply another tough opponent. They believe his size, wrestling, physical strength, and striking could combine to make him one of the most challenging matchups Islam could face. Move on to another news, because Jiri Prochazka and Paulo Costa are now involved in a heated exchange over a potential UFC matchup. Jiri has addressed Paulo Costa after Costa mentioned him on social media, and Jiri made it very clear that he wants the situation handled differently. In a direct message aimed at UFC fans and Costa, Jiri explained that he had a simple request for the Brazilian fighter. He told Paulo not to tag him and not to mention him in social media posts. The reason is that, according to Jiri, Costa has already received an offer from the UFC for a potential fight against him in either October or November. Jiri's message was straightforward. If Paulo doesn't want to fight him, then he shouldn't continue mentioning his name or talking about him online. At the same time, Jiri made it clear that he is ready to move forward with the matchup. He said that he is waiting for the contract and appears willing to sign if the fight is finalized. But Paulo wasn't exactly interested in backing down. Costa responded to Jiri through X, and his reply immediately added more fuel to the situation. Paulo sarcastically claimed that everyone wants to fight him because, in his words, he is the guy in what he considers a boring division. However, Costa then made a completely different claim about the potential matchup. He said that, so far, nobody had even mentioned Jiri's name to him. Costa then dismissed Jiri's comments and told him to go back to doing what he described as his weird activities, questioning exactly what Jiri was doing. That response naturally created even more tension between the two fighters. At this point, the fight is not officially booked, but the possibility of Jiri facing Costa in October or November is clearly generating attention. Jiri appears to believe an offer is already on the table, while Costa's response suggests there is still some uncertainty surrounding whether the matchup will actually happen. For now, the contract remains the key piece of the puzzle. If the UFC can finalize the deal, this could turn into a very interesting clash between two experienced light heavyweights with completely different personalities and fighting styles. And with both fighters already trading shots on social media, the build-up could become just as entertaining as the fight itself. Move on to another news, because Robert Whittaker has already started looking toward his next opponent after making a successful move up to the light heavyweight division. Whittaker recently stepped into the 205-pound division and made an immediate statement, defeating Nikita Krylov by third-round TKO at UFC 329. After that impressive performance, attention quickly turned toward who could be next for the former middleweight champion. During an appearance on the Believe You Me podcast, Robert discussed several potential opponents and made it clear that he has no shortage of options. One name that caught his attention was Magomed Ankalaev. Whittaker said he would love the opportunity to share the octagon with Ankalaev, suggesting that matchup would be a very interesting challenge at light heavyweight. He also mentioned other fighters who could potentially make sense, including Yan, although he acknowledged that Yan had recently suffered a loss. Another name came up as well, with Whittaker saying that Bogdan could have been a great fight. But there was one name that Robert clearly wasn't excited about hearing again: Paulo Costa. Costa has also recently moved up to light heavyweight, which immediately created speculation about a possible rematch. However, Whittaker doesn't appear particularly interested in running it back. The two fighters already faced each other in 2024, with Whittaker winning by unanimous decision. Because they have already shared the octagon, Robert believes there are plenty of other opponents available who could provide a fresh challenge. Whittaker also explained that he doesn't want to fight the people he trains with. He joked that if things eventually reached a point where he, Carlos, and Nav were ranked around numbers 1, 2, and 3, they could sit down together and figure out a way to make some serious money. But for now, Robert is focused on continuing his own progression through the rankings. He admitted that there is still work to do before he reaches the position he wants, but he's enjoying the journey. Moving up to light heavyweight has given Whittaker a completely different feeling about his career. Instead of simply continuing the same path, he sees this period as a new chapter. He's enjoying climbing the rankings again, facing new opponents, and testing himself in a different division. After years of competing at the highest level, Whittaker appears motivated by the challenge, and his latest comments suggest he isn't interested in taking the easiest route. For now, the focus is on continuing that progression and finding the next opponent capable of pushing him further. Move on to another news, because Islam Makhachev has shared his thoughts on Conor's future, and his comments have sparked plenty of attention. Islam believes that Conor may now be approaching the final stage of his MMA career. According to Islam, Conor could have only one fight remaining on his current UFC contract, and he expects that final appearance could eventually lead to a move into boxing or another combat sport. Islam also suggested that money could be a major motivation behind Conor's decision to continue fighting. During his comments, Islam claimed that Conor may have spent a significant amount of his wealth and could be looking for another major payday. However, these were Islam's personal remarks and should be viewed as his opinion rather than a confirmed statement about Conor's financial situation. The idea of Conor making another boxing appearance has been discussed for years, especially after his previous crossover into professional boxing. With his massive global profile, even one more fight could potentially generate enormous attention. Islam's comments therefore add another layer to the ongoing discussion about what could come next for Conor. If Conor does have one final UFC fight remaining, the identity of his opponent would obviously become a major storyline. After that, a potential move toward boxing could open the door to several possibilities. For now, however, nothing about Conor's future should be treated as confirmed based solely on Islam's comments. The former UFC champion has remained one of the biggest names in combat sports, and any announcement involving his return would immediately attract worldwide attention. Islam's remarks also highlight how different fighters view Conor's current motivation. While some may see a potential comeback as another opportunity to compete at the highest level, Islam believes financial motivation could be an important factor. Whatever eventually happens, Conor's next move will likely remain one of the biggest stories in MMA, especially if he decides to make one final UFC appearance before exploring opportunities outside the promotion.